Welcome back to Creative Thinkers. Again, my name is Miguel Valenzuela, and we're here with Tiffany Menifee at Pronto Body Shop. So she's the owner, and we're here on the corner of Cotton and Myrtle. Welcome, Tiffany.
Thank you.
I'm so excited because you're welcoming us to your actual body shop where you have a whole bunch of artwork on the walls. So we're going to talk a little bit about your artwork. We're going to talk about who you are, where you're from, how you ended up in El Paso. So start us off by telling us how you got to El Paso.
I'm from the Abilene area, and then most of my adult life I grew up in the Austin area, and I was coming out here for work, and I just fell in love with El Paso. And when I decided I wanted to sort of, settle down and not travel for work as much, El Paso was sort of a prime spot for me. The weather's great, the food is great, the people are super nice here, so this is where I landed, and I've been super happy.
So you do a lot of events here in El Paso, but when you were younger, because one of the things another thing that we talked about off camera was that you were saying that you are a little bit of an introvert, yet I always see you out doing things. So was that something that you grew up with?
I think I've always been super introverted, and I think that's sort of where the artistic side of me comes into play also, and why I love art so much, because I grew up in such a rural area with not a lot of people around. Coming to El Paso is like having a large family, and everybody knows everybody, and they want to be like interconnected in your life. So it's definitely been a stretch for me to become an extrovert and sort of be around. And I think because I'm just used to, just being myself, and I think that's where sort of the art style of me comes into play, and why I love it so much, because, it's what makes you creative.
So one of the things that we were talking about is creativity. How important is creativity to you?
We were always outside, so I think I was really blessed that my father never told me that I wasn't able to do anything. If I wanted to paint, or I wanted to build something, or I wanted to try something, it was try it, and well, if you suck at it or you fail, like, no big deal, try something else, So, I guess that's where it sort of came from. He never told me no. And so I was always into crafts and art and building stuff, and it was just an outlet for me.
And those types of crafts and art, was that mainly your creativity, or were there other things outside of that?
I think that was, my father always worked a desk job, but he also on the side built houses and remodeled and built wood. And so I was always on site with him. So, it was, learn to wire this plug, or learn to sand this piece of, furniture and restain it. So we were just always really hands-on with everything. And so I think that's just where the creative side of us came out. I studied basically history. I didn't study art. I just have always loved it, and art is subjective. So I've always had a very specific style of art I've liked, or specific taste, and I've just always, have been gravitated towards art and the beauty of it. So I like art that makes you think, I think you'll show a picture of our Statue of Liberty piece, and especially being here in the borderland, it means so many things to so many different people, and I was really surprised when we put it up, because we have people from the military base that come by and say, you look at it and take pictures because it reminds them of being patriotic and what they're serving for. But then we also have people come by and ask about the poem on it, because it says, give me your tired, your poor, your wretched refuse.
Right.
And so many people stop by and they've never even have heard the poem that's on the Statue of Liberty. And it's really interesting to tell them that and sort of see their eyes open of, hey, this is what our country was sort of built on. And then when we were having the issue with the migrant children being detained here, a lot of them, we had people stop by once they got their children back with their attorneys and take pictures in front of the Statue of Liberty, because it meant something different to them, because it meant, a better life, more freedom. And she's facing Mexico for a reason. I was going to
ask you about that. What is the reason behind that?
Because that was the original Statue of Liberty. She looked out to the ocean, to Europe, to say, give me your tired, your poor, your refuse, yearning to breathe free. So she's facing Mexico because it's the same thing. Give me the people that, are seeking a better life. And so it's been really interesting to see how people take that one painting and can relate it to so many different things, in their life. So, to me, I find that beautiful.
You were mentioning your murals and how important creativity is, and you actually created a bunch of murals here. How do they connect to the job that you're doing here with the body shop?
I think it's what moves me, you know?
Right.
It's not just something being put up because I want to put it up. It's something because it plays to something that's really important to me. And a couple of years ago, I had somebody stop by out of New York and take pictures, and they said, "Oh, can you tell me about your social justice murals?" And I was like, "Oh, huh."
You weren't expecting
I
that?
was like, I never thought of them that way. And they're like, well, I mean, really? I was like, well, no. They're like, you have the Statue of Liberty facing Mexico. You have, no taxation without representation for the women's suffrage movement.
Right.
And then we have Viva la Huelga, which is, live the strike, to go back to the workers community here that we're in, because we're right on the cusp of the Segundo Barrio.
Right.
And so, the Cesar Chavez movement and everything, and that's a throwback to our neighborhood. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess they are social justice murals. So it's the murals have been put up for what I find, moving, and, that means something to me. And I have space to put other murals up, and I'm sure we'll put more up, but I have to find something that isn't just beautiful, but something that has meaning to it for me, and so we'll get there eventually. Most of it was we've sort of collaborated. Like, hey, with the Statue of Liberty, I was like, I've always wanted a Statue of Liberty on the building with the start of the poem. And then a local artist, Victor Hernandez, I saw some of his paintings that are done in this very bold style of color.
Right.
And I was like, hey, Victor, do you think you could do the Statue of Liberty in that style of painting, really large? And he was like, of course. And so it sort of came up with that. And then the mural that's on the other side of the building, that's the woman under the car doing mechanical work and sort of a skyline of El Paso. That was another artist, Victor Casas, and I knew I had wanted some type of mural that reflects that we're a body shop, that we're woman owned and operated. And so I sort of collaborated with him. I was like, this is sort of the idea I have. This is what can you come up with? And I sort of gave him free rein, and and let him do his thing, and he came up with it. So it's a little bit of collaboration, but a lot of just letting the artists sort of take it where they want to take it.
How important is it for you to be a mentor to young girls or women? Because it's very important for us to bring this idea to the forefront.
I think for me it's really important, just because still, I don't know, I look back and say, still in society, people are always surprised when you see women in the man's industry. And
yeah, because you mentioned man's industry. This is definitely what most people would think so. How do you feel in that industry?
For me, I've never considered oh, it's difficult or anything. It's just,
what you do?
What I do, yeah. So, but I think it's important to be able to have women and girls and other people see there's more than just being a teacher or a doctor or whatever. There's so many industries open to it, but sometimes we think, we're intimidated because maybe you don't see as many women in that industry. So for me, it's important to set that example in our society.
You think that females are intimidated, or do you think society intimidates them?
I think both. If you look back during World War II and World War I, with Rosie the Riveter, and how many women actually went out and worked in the manufacturing plants and, did all these things, and, daycare was provided and all this stuff. And then when men came back from World War II, now they needed the jobs back, and women were regulated back to being in the house. I think it's important to be able to say, one, don't be intimidated if it's a man's industry, and two, not to let society dictate what we do.
And do you think it's important for you to kind of show that to the younger women, girls?
I think you have to lead by example. I think with everything that we see in the news and everything, and, news stories and complaining and lawsuits, and that's all well and good, but ultimately I think we change society by leading by example.
And what are you doing specifically?
leading by example, I guess. If somebody asks me a question, I try to be open with them. I do a lot of stuff here in the local community. I love to speak I love to do career days at the schools because it opens kids' eyes, because they think sometimes, oh, the automotive industry is just fixing cars, but it's not. There's science behind painting a car. There's science behind the chemicals that make up a car. The people that are in the office have to have good reading and writing skills. The technology, even with AI technology going into repairing vehicles and stuff, all of that plays effect. So I think leading by example, but also putting yourself out there to, show the kids that it's more than just fixing a car. There's so many aspects of different industries that you may not think about.
There really is, and I think the connection that you have created through creativity itself, specifically one of the murals that we're going to be talking about, which is the women's suffrage movement, I think it's important for people to understand that it isn't separate, it's very connected. Why did you choose that mural?
I don't know. I mean, I've just always, I think I was so fortunate to grow up with a father that never told me I couldn't do anything or to just do one thing. I have an older brother, and it was like, hey, this needs to be done. Like, y'all both do it. There was no segregation or no like, oh, well, you're a girl, you need to stay inside and learn to cook or anything like that. So I think the women's suffrage poster really just, spoke to me that, one, there's no difference between us, in how we should be treated, but two, it hasn't been very long since we gained the right to vote and things like that, and there's still a long way to come in, how we view things in society and how we view ourselves.
Absolutely, and it makes you guys stronger, and it makes society stronger as well. One of the things that really, I guess, impressed me about your shop is that you have a lot of artwork all over the place, but you also fix cars. How did you get into this industry? Because you started somewhere else.
I was in the insurance industry for almost 20 years, and I always gravitated to the auto side. I did auto insurance claims, auto insurance adjusting, all kinds of stuff like that. And I had the opportunity to take over Pronto Body Shop and sort of build something, and just something that I said, I think I can do it. There was no real thought of like, oh, like I can make money doing this. I was like, I think I could do it. I think I like it. And turns out I could do it, and I was good at it. And it's been really good to me, and El Paso's been really good to me. So, I mean, there was no really thought process behind like, oh, let's do this. It was just like, I think I can do it. Let's jump in and do it. And so here we are.
Has it been difficult for you?
Honestly, I mean, going into business for anybody is difficult. I mean, they say if you can survive the first 5 years, you're doing good. So, yes, business is difficult, but do I think it's been more difficult because of where I come from or anything? I don't think so, honestly. Actually, for me, I think being a woman is a benefit in my industry because people generally feel a little bit more comfortable speaking to a woman because they feel, a lot of times people feel like when they go to a mechanic shop or a body shop that they feel like they're going to get taken advantage of because maybe they don't know exactly everything that's going to happen. So I think speaking to a woman sometimes makes people feel a little bit more comfortable when they're dealing with cars because we have just a little bit more of a natural ability to sort of explain things to people, make them feel a little bit more comfortable and
a little bit more passive, maybe.
And so I honestly I feel like being a woman has really helped me in this industry, and honestly El Paso has just been so welcoming to me. I mean, I tell people all the time, I couldn't do what I've done in El Paso, I think, like in Austin, just because it's a different beast over there. But El Paso has just been such a welcoming and warm city that, I mean, I think it's a hidden gem here.
It absolutely is. And one of the things that I find really compelling about the city itself is that there is a lot of creativity. Have you run into that in other aspects aside from the artwork that you've created?
Oh my gosh, El Paso is such a creative city. I mean, we have a really thriving art community here, and it pulls up in so many different areas. You have, different groups of artists, creating little community art museums. There's just so many different things, and I think the thing that I like about El Paso the most with the art community is that they're very open and willing to include you, so it's not, where sometimes you feel like you can't, walk up and talk to somebody. It's very inclusive here. So I think we have a beautiful art community. you just have to look around and find it.
I think you do, and once you find it, you get really excited about it. And I think that's like the catalyst for a whole bunch of other things that happen within our city. So can you give us some, I guess, input on how important it is for people to be creative and to think outside the box?
I mean,
because I see it a lot in your place.
I mean, I think it's super important to be creative and think outside the box, because if not, you sort of get stagnant. You know, you have a box, the society tells us we need to be in this box.
Right.
But who's to say society's correct? We've
Throughout
history, we've seen society's not been correct for so many different things. Look at all the things we've had to, overcome, and discriminations and things like that. So society's not correct a lot of the time. So I think it's really important to be creative and think outside of the box, because who else is going to dictate and tell society what they're wrong about? We need to
I agree with that.
We need to fix that ourselves. So
yeah, I think we're in control in many ways. But one of the things that I see a lot, especially from teaching, is that a lot of individuals don't think that they're creative. Can you give the audience a little bit of a kind of a concept of how you have tried to push this creativity?
I think so many people don't think they're creative or don't think they're artists because they don't paint.
Right.
Or they don't sculpt. But there's so many different forms of artists. I tell people, in my business, I have a body shop. You would think, okay, they fix cars, they're not artists. But if you think about it, a body repair technician is an artist. He's having to put body filler on a car, sand it down, recreate the lines, reshape it, rehang it. So he's like being a sculptist,
Exactly.
And then you have the person that paints the cars. Okay, you think he mixes some paint and paints the cars. There's a lot of technique and skill that really goes into painting a vehicle. And a lot of these guys, they're artists on their own, and they paint or do other stuff outside of their daily jobs. And so I think you have to put aside that we have this definition of what art is. You have to be a muralist or a painter or a drawer, or you sculpt or this, and realize that there's many forms of art. It could be you take old pieces of furniture and give them new life and recreate them into something else. That's an artist.
Absolutely.
There's just so many different levels, and so I think we need to break the idea that art is one particular thing, and art is so many different things in our life. Even young girls that like to make like the little crafts that you see, that's art in a form,
Absolutely.
It's not just arts and crafts like we like to say, setting it aside, oh, well, you do arts and crafts, That's a form of art. It's a form of creativity, and I think it's been proven that if you're using that portion of your brain, it helps you with so many other aspects of your life.
So you do a lot of other things here in El Paso. You actually create kind of an environment for business people to be a part of. Can you tell us how you started that?
Well, I think this is how I look at it. Usually you have people think you have a business so that way you can make money and do the things you want. And I think I'm sort of opposite. I'm have all these ideas. And so this is my testing ground for the business. It's sort of vice versa. It's oh, I want to do this. Well, I own a business. I can do that, so I try it, instead of vice versa. So I think my business and everything that goes into it is definitely an extension of myself and my personality and everything else that goes with me. So all of the creative ideas I have, have gone into the shop. And sometimes we do stuff and I love it. And then I'm oh my God, I can't believe we spent that much money doing that. That's ridiculous. But
you tried it.
But tried it and it made us happy. And we had a good time doing it. And I think that's the main thing, So, and that's, I think also with artists and people, and that's being a creative thinker. You try stuff and if it works, great. And if it doesn't, you move on, or you realize, oh, maybe it didn't work out as good as you thought it was, and
exactly.
Who cares, and you try something next.
So one of the things that we talk about a lot in our show is being creative. Do you believe that you are an outside the box thinker? I see it, but do you see it?
Oh, for sure. I question everything, and sometimes it drives people crazy, but I question it because you never know, all right, okay, yes, you're telling me that, but is it correct? Some things, yes, but I want to know, I want to understand, and so I question a lot of things, and I ask questions because, just because you're telling me one thing doesn't mean that's the way it really is or really should be, so I'm definitely an outside the box thinker. I've gotten me into a ton of trouble sometimes, but it's
Right.
also done wonderful
I've
things
been
for
there,
me
done
also.
that too.
I've come up with some great ideas that I thought later on I was like, what was I really thinking? But you know what? Hey, at least I tried it.
Exactly, and that's what you have to do. But when I was a child, I always thought outside the box. Whatever I did, I remember having a motorcycle and kind of riding out there. When you were out in the open area from where you lived, do you think that influenced in what you do today?
Oh, for sure. We did not have, my father was really good at not giving us boundaries. I mean,
Right.
we basically had 2 rules. Don't kill people or hurt them, and don't do drugs.
Which are great rules.
Those were like the 2 rules. That was it. Everything else was acceptable, like, okay, like you did it, like, are you sorry that you did it and got in trouble? Okay, but those were the rules, and he didn't set any boundaries to us, and I think that sort of made me who I am today, because I didn't have somebody telling me, well, don't do that, well, don't try that, well, if you do that, you're going to get hurt, and don't try that. It was like, well, try it, and well, we have to take you to the ER. We take you to the ER, so.
So living here in El Paso and mentoring others, when you were growing up, did you have any mentors?
I mean, I think my father was probably my main mentor, and then I just had wonderful business mentors that, always made me think,
In which way?
I think the best advice was one of my main mentors, Tom, and he would say, okay, well, after you're done asking people questions, say, is there anything that I forgot to ask?
That's a good one.
And I think that makes you think as a person when somebody asks you, okay, I've asked you all these questions, what did I fail to ask? It makes that person think outside the box, of like, hey, like, all these things.
Like, where can we go from here,
and
right?
I think, just things like that, or, the other thing I think he always told me was he was like, the old cameras, the Polaroids, he was
Right.
like, when you have special moments, he was like, take a mental Polaroid, a snapshot in mentally, so you remember that moment and, savor it. Because now so many people are on their phones and taking pictures, and then we fail to experience, what we're taking pictures of because we're too busy taking a picture of it. And so he always said, just take a mental snapshot of, what you're doing and what you're enjoying and stuff. So I think just those 2 pieces of advice really made a difference for me personally, because
They allowed you to grow and flourish?
Mm-hmm. It helps you to live in the moment and remember those and enjoy them, and then, ask questions that, and learn from other people, because I think learning from other people is super important. So I think, his question of like, once you're done asking your questions, ask, what did I fail to ask? What did I, that makes you
because
learn.
it begins, creates a dialogue, I think, that will then help them move to some other place. And that's one of the things that I noticed walking into your office, is that everybody's really happy and excited and cheerful. Do you think that you, or the way that you are mentoring them, is that a positive situation for them? Because I see it.
I think so. I can tell, I have one employee, she wasn't here today, and, grew up very traditional, very with the male-oriented roles in her family and stuff.
Right.
And one of her friends not too long ago said, man, she has really stepped up and come into her own, and
Beautiful.
and that really, I was like, man, you don't realize how you're mentoring people until you hear comments like that. So I mean, I love my staff, and I think you attract people that are like you and similar and stuff, and
Right.
and I love to have them grow and see how they can grow and how I can learn from them also.
And creativity is very, very important. I see it on the outside. What's in the future for you?
You never know.
Artwork, business?
Oh, artwork always. I always love art. Business, we're always tweaking it and seeing, what to do. You just never know. I mean, I might be here in 5 years, I may not. You just never know where life will take you. But Pronto's just been so good to me so far that I'm sure I'll still be here, and I'm sure there'll be more murals on the building in the future.
Not being from El Paso and coming here, how important is it for you to become a part of this community?
I love El Paso. El Paso has been so good to me, and like I said, I think it is a hidden gem that more people, well, they don't really need to know about, because then, because then we have more
You
people
want to keep them out now?
Yeah. No, El Paso is beautiful, and I think that when you come and actually learn the city and the people and stuff, you fall in love with it.
And if there's one piece of advice that you can give our audience, our viewers, what would it be?
Don't let society dictate what you think. Just because somebody else says it doesn't mean it's true. Think for yourself.
And by thinking for themselves, do you think that that's going to propel them somewhere? And did it do that for you?
I think I've always sort of thought for myself. I mean, it's hard because society does tell us certain things and it makes us feel certain ways and things like that. But I think, if you can break away and think for yourself, and why do I like this, or why do I want to do this, or why, ask the question why, I think it'll change your life a lot, because then you're doing stuff that you want and not what society says that we should be doing.
And I think that's very important. So how does one get a hold of you?
They can find me at the shop, or they can find us online at prontobodyshop.com, or all the social media accounts, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat. Just look up Pronto Body Shop and we're there.
You're all over the place.
We're all over the place.
Very good. Tiffany, thank you for hosting us here at your body shop. It was a great experience talking to you. And I wanted to thank everybody for joining us once again here at Creative Thinkers. Please come back and join us again.